Well, hello everyone, and welcome to 17 Minutes of Science. My name is Sarah Cheeseman. I'm a technical solutions scientist at Vivo Biosystems. It's nice to be back. We've been off for a few weeks, and it's good to be here today with our guest, Dr. Zachary Pratt, who is joining us from high school, Parker High School in Janesville, Wisconsin. So he's coming across the miles. He's actually at school right now and has graciously taken time out across his prep period to join us to talk about a teacher's mission to increase diversity in STEM through the classroom. So the story goes like this. Recently, Zach reached out on Twitter to ask his fellow scientists about a grassroots effort that he's initiating to provide relatable mentors to his students in the classroom in high school and to encourage and increase diversity in STEM. So Zach thought he might get a few responses, but he was blown away when 360 different scientists responded so far. So he's got one for every day of the year. So Zach's going to tell us about this journey. And I would love to turn it over to Zach for a minute to introduce himself and tell us a wee bit about his background, and then we'll jump right into the questions.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I'm so excited to be here. So my background, I went to graduate school at UW-Madison after earning a bachelor's degree. I studied viruses and how viruses cause cancer. And then I went on to do a postdoc in bacteriology for 3 years and spent 5 years teaching college. And then by just some luck of the draw, I ended up in high school. And so this is my 3rd year teaching high school. And yeah, I think I'm at the point now in my life where I can say that I'm not ready to go back to college anymore. I'm definitely happy with where I'm at right now.
High school's where you're meant to be.
I think so. It wasn't the intention originally, but that's where it ended up being in the end, yeah.
So you're both a research background and a teacher. You kind of have it all.
Yeah, I mean, the research was really the passion that I started with, and then, but I knew very early on, especially in grad school, that I wanted to be. And my grad school advisor and I actually fought back and forth about it for a while. It took him until I got into my postdoc that he realized like I was meant to be teaching at a smaller school, which is what I ended up doing for a while. And now, I mean, we have a great relationship.
Well, you're doing them all proud by continuing to teach science, which of course, preaching to the choir here, but we think that is so important that we have teachers who have this kind of background that you do.
Thank you.
To bring it to life. So I would love to hear more about this project that you started. And I will say that I forgot to set the timer. I'm just admitting that I didn't come fully prepared, but I'm going to watch the clock on my computer and I will make some other signal.
Okay.
Maybe I'll impersonate my timer that I normally
Okay, it sounds good.
We'll let you know that we're in our last minute. So clearly I was rushing to get here and didn't bring all my tools. Anyway, goodness for the clock on the computer. So I wanted to say, when I first learned about this with you, I was thinking, well, here's a great story of Twitter for good. So I want to hear more about how you got started with this project and taking to Twitter as a medium to find people.
So, I mean, look, I'm incredibly lucky, and I also know that I am a privileged white male that has come up through science, and that's not everybody's story. And so there were really a couple of things, and with the summer being the way that it was, that kind of led to this finally taking a step to try and do something a little bit differently and really to try to make, hopefully, outcomes for my students better. So one of the instances was I was talking to a fellow teacher who teaches history, who actually decided that he was going to introduce to his students the idea that really there are many different voices that tell stories of US history. And his goal this year is really to kind of bring that story or those different stories into his classroom. And so he kind of inspired me to take a leap and to try and do something. And it came down to the fact that one day I was just kind of sitting, I need to figure out how to reach out to other people. So to give a little bit of background, why do we need to do this here at Parker? We were a town that was very much affected by the 2008 recession. We had a GM plant that closed right at the end of that year. And we have, sorry, my lights went out for a second. There we go. And so we have been recovering since that time. one of the things that we have a number of students, about 50% in the district now, that are at or below the poverty line. And so our whole district now offers free and reduced lunch for all students. So we have a population that doesn't necessarily have a lot of role models that have had backgrounds similar to them. Most of the teachers in the school are white individuals. We have come from pretty good backgrounds. And so I felt it was time that we provide something for our students of color, our Hispanic and Latino and Latina students, and also for our students that have not necessarily had the means that in the past might have prevented them from getting to college or to those degrees in the sciences. So I sent out a Twitter blast, and really I came to school on a Wednesday with 7 names on a list, and it just kind of spiraled out of control. The rest of the day, I spent about 8 hours online trying to respond to people who were messaging me, telling me their stories. And I think I was overwhelmed with emotion. Like by 9 o'clock in the morning, I was crying because I couldn't believe how many people had responded. And by that point, it was like 60. And like you said, we're now at over 360 people who have shared their story in some way. And so that's really what's kind of unfolded in the past 3 weeks.
It's happened so quickly, but I guess that's the speed of Twitter in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so when you posted that call out, as you said, did you do it more than once? I was trying to look back at the notes.
Yeah, I actually so I did it a couple of different ways. I first sent out one for like microbiologists, and that got nowhere. And then I went to, about a week later, I sent one out on a Facebook post to family and friends, and that's where I had gotten a few. And doing that actually got me connected again to trying it again on Twitter, but making it more broad for biologists and scientists in general. And so that second one is what really took off. And we, in that population of 360 people, we have individuals with a variety of backgrounds, including individuals in the LGBTQ community, people outside of the US, including Canada, Australia, the UK, people who are first generation graduates of college, or people who have immigrated to the US. I mean, it's just unbelievable the diversity of individuals who have responded to this.
Sounds like you have gotten perhaps even more than you dreamed of. And what will you ask these people to do now in terms of connecting with your students, and what's the next step in the commitment you're asking from these individuals?
Yeah, so I mean, originally the hope was just get some people to talk about themselves. And I realized real quickly that I had to start organizing the information in some way. So right now, what we've kind of opened it up to, or what I'm opening up to, are one slide about me's. So basically like a one slide, here's who I am, here's what I do, and here's some of the other things that kind of make me who I am. And the goal there is really to get my students to connect with them or identify with these individuals, either because of a common interest in science or common interest in something outside, or maybe it's something in their background and their personality that they interact with. We're also looking for people who are willing to answer questions from the students, maybe about what's it like to be a scientist in your location, or what has it been like to be an individual who has come from a low socioeconomic status and now have a PhD or a master's degree in your field of study. So we're looking for relationships like that. Things that we are working on, but we're just not ready to do yet, are interviews on face-to-face, doing short talks, or even having somebody kind of do a video diary, a 5-minute video diary of what their day is like, and then mentoring. Somehow, and we haven't really figured this one out yet, because since we are working with high school students, we do have to pay attention to their safety. So we'd like to, or at least one of the things I'd like to do, is to try and set up some sort of like mentor-mentee type relationship. Just don't know how that's going to work out. So that's kind of in the planning for the next year, as I figure out what we're going to do with all these people who are willing to help out.
That's a good problem to have. So what do the students think of this? And it seems to me, we talked about you might have brought something to them last week. So
Yeah. So I've actually asked in almost all of my classes for them to try and identify or connect to one of these individuals. And it's the interest from the students has been actually really positive so far. So when I brought up the concept to them for the students to introduce me to them, but also to identify themselves in another scientist, I could see a lot of heads nodding, like, yeah, okay, I like this idea. One of the things that I've actually been overwhelmed with is how comfortable students have felt as a response of this. And I think that comfort level is really important to the success of the classroom. And so some students have begun to share things that they see in themselves or where they want to go based on these people that they've identified with. And I think what they're starting to see is that they can also succeed in these fields. My microbiology class, which was the group that I really wanted to do this with first, and the reason being is because in looking at the history of microbiology, we have a lot of old white men in the field in the 1800s and the early 1900s. I actually asked them to email the persons that they were in contact with, and some of them have already been getting emails back. And I think that they've been like really impressed and actually surprised to get emails back from people who are scientists kind of at the top of their field, who are willing to take the time to talk to them. And so today we were doing a lab where some of them were doing microscopy, and actually two of them on the side were having a conversation about somebody who had emailed them back. And so it's leading to some conversations about the science that's going on, but just like kind of humanizing these individuals in some ways as well, that maybe we don't necessarily associate with the prototypical scientist right now.
fair comment. And I'm thinking too that, I mean, one of the key tenets of good science is mentorship, is that you need others to teach you and hold your hand and help you along. And then you pay it forward. You do it
Yeah,
for someone else.
absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. There we
Oh,
go.
we have the 5-minute timer today.
There we go.
You can keep dancing. That's a really good touch.
That won't win any awards. I promise.
We all have to have a sense of humor.
Right.
Things happen in these digital communications. So other programs that are out there like Skype a Scientist are established, and there seems to be some similarities between what I understand about that and what you're doing. Can you share what you see is different about your approach?
Yeah. So I'll say a couple of things here. One, I think it's been really cathartic. For me, telling stories is a nice way to, it's very cathartic for me overall. And I think that for the people who have responded, in part, I think it's a way for them to feel that their voices have been heard as a response to this. What I like about this, or what makes this a little bit different, is that it's almost become in a way that the students are able to identify for themselves who they might connect with. I've kind of described it in some ways, and I don't mean for this to sound glib, but it's kind of a la carte in some ways. Students get to choose who they might want to talk to. And so in that way, it becomes a little bit more independent from the students, but it also becomes more personalized when they're trying to have a conversation one-on-one. I think the other thing that might make this a little bit different is I haven't asked for any one group of individuals in particular. Actually, a lot of people, when I was chatting to them on Twitter, were like, I don't know if I fit. And I was like, you know what? You have a story to tell. Please share it. I think it would add value to this experience. And so I haven't tried to tailor this towards any one particular group, but just highlight the true diversity that really does exist.
Fabulous. Love to hear that. Well, I want to just switch gears in our last couple of minutes. So I mentioned at the beginning of this that you're sitting in a room on campus at the high school, and so you're clearly in the classroom. We out here in our area in Oregon, our students are going to be all online when we actually go back to school. We've had these wildfires that have gone ahead and disrupted things even further. So our children are not yet back, but it will look different than what you're experiencing. So just love for you to tell everybody who's with us today how that's going and how your students are feeling about being there, and just a bit about that.
So here right now, we do have our students on campus. Our class sizes are a little bit smaller than they typically have been, which allows us to distance. Everybody's, when we're in front of each other, we're wearing our masks. And so we are at least trying to take the precautions that we can, even to the point of spraying down desks after classes to make sure that they can be wiped down before the next class. It's been interesting. One of the things that's been tough is I think the masks kind of take away some of the personality from it. So you have to express emotions in other ways. Yesterday, I noticed myself jumping up and down and clapping a lot as a way to express excitement. Um, I think last week there was a lot of nervous energy and hesitation. I don't think anybody was ready to just like commit emotionally just yet, because on a whim, we could go ahead and flip or change to an online learning. In fact, a couple of schools around us have done that in the past day. And so at any moment, we might be virtual. And I think that's kind of held everybody in reserve a little bit. But I will say this, for the students that have been here and for the teachers that have been here, I mean, I know those emotional connections are growing really quickly, and I think people are just happy to be here. And for those reasons, we haven't seen many issues with students not wearing masks or taking care of themselves. Lunchtime is obviously a different issue, but in the class, it's been really good so far. And so I've been excited about what I'm seeing, and I really hope we are able to stay online. I think you just can't replicate that process or that experience for the students.
When you have some students who are exclusively online, does that mean you have to double teach? How are you managing that?
Yeah, so we actually have a separate online academy in our school district. So nobody has to, though some people have chosen to add on to their teaching load for the year to do those few extra classes. But if students have to go into quarantine or something like that, we use Google Classroom as our learning management system. So they have that option, and it just involves taping extra lectures or something like that in the time being, just to make sure that they're staying up with what they're supposed to.
Yeah, whole new world trying to manage all these different ways
Yeah.
to keep up. Wow. Well, that was 17 minutes, Zach. We just did it. Went by like that. And thank you for sharing all of this great storytelling, especially about your connections with colleagues all over the world wanting to support your students. We'll stay tuned to see how that goes. And I wish you all the best, that you can stay in the classroom and everyone stays well and safe.
Thank you. And thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
This was great. Thanks everybody for joining us. Stay safe out there. Hopefully air is clearing in the coming days for all of us in the West. And Zach is telling us that it's moved over to the Midwest. So it's a phenomenon that is spreading, but hopefully we'll come out of this soon. So see you next time. Take care.